Good evening, everybody. Hope you all are doing well this evening, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. We're going to take a moment and share this to our own personal Facebook page. And while we're getting that going, I did want to just take a moment to introduce ourselves in case you're watching this and don't know who we are. My name is Juan Alviar. I am an independent insurance agent in Snellville, Georgia, and we are based here, but we also have service to Arizona and Ohio. And this, of course, is Angelo Alviar, my brother and associate agent. And today we're going to be talking about a very important topic that applies to a lot of families. And so if you're watching this and you know someone who has small children, then this is a perfect opportunity for them to be protected and to make sure that their policy coverages are set right. Every Wednesday we bring you the topic of versus, where we take topics in insurance, the insurance realm, and we pit them against each other. We're discussing different ways that they compare and how to choose between different things. Sometimes we talk about coverages, sometimes we talk about different policies, sometimes we talk about carriers. But regardless, we do want you to go ahead and share. I think this is going to be very valuable information.
Yep, it sure will be.
All right. So Angelo's going to ask us some questions, and I'm going to answer it and give you the inside track on versus child's term rider versus them owning their own policy.
All right, did you already ask him to like the business page?
If you haven't, go ahead and do it. You see right there on the page, you can like it, you can share it, this live stream, and of course it can be sent through.
He got kind of close there.
You can send it via message, you can send it via text, etc., etc.
All right, so today we're gonna be discussing again child's term riders versus getting them their own insurance policy. I'm going to ask the questions of Juan. He's going to answer it. So first question I have is, what in the world is a child's term rider?
A child's term rider is insurance lingo for something that you can add on to an insurance policy. Now, the word rider basically means that it's an addendum, or you're altering an insurance policy. Either you're adding more coverage or you're taking it away. But that's what a rider means, is it's changing the policy. But a child's term rider, or sometimes referred to as a CTR, what that does is that basically takes an adult term policy, again, term meaning that it's got a fixed amount of coverage over a fixed amount of time with a fixed price. But it's taking that policy and adding on to that a child's policy. Essentially, it's a term rider that gives limited coverage in case that young child is to pass away. So it's a quick and easy way to obtain life insurance for a child.
Okay, so it's like you getting a life insurance policy is like you on a motorcycle, and then you add a child's term rider is like you add a little sidecar to it.
Basically so, yes. Now you cannot obtain a child's term rider by itself. Again, a rider means it's amending something else. It's adding an addendum to something else. So basically it's taking that adult policy and adding on some pieces that help insure the child. So
that sidecar can't go on by itself.
No,
it's got to be
it
on
has
a
no
motorcycle.
motor. That's right.
Okay. So are there any advantages to a child's term rider?
Absolutely. Generally speaking, a child's term rider is the cheapest way to add insurance coverage for a child. And the vast majority of the time, for most carriers, you do not have to obtain a separate health inspection for that child. Generally speaking, the agent just has to witness that the child is existent and fine and everything's okay. And then the parent is going through the underwriting process, which usually includes what's called a paramed, or a home medical inspection. And so the parent goes through that process, and then the child is just simply extended coverage on the child's term rider as a part of that policy.
Well, what disadvantages are there to a child's term rider then?
There are a couple. One of the biggest ones is that the coverage amount is usually very low. So there is a limit. You know, they're not going to let you have a $20,000 or $25,000 policy on the parent and a $250,000 policy on the child. So it never lets it, exceed that. I don't know of a carrier out there that does that. In addition to that, they want to make sure that that it falls under certain guidelines. Otherwise, they're opening themselves up to potential risks. So again, the policy limits are usually low. But the second big thing, disadvantage, is that some carriers, not all, but some carriers will not allow that child to move that child's term rider off when they're full grown, and it becomes something else. So some do, and those are good companies to to look at. But typically speaking, the disadvantages of that are pretty heavy, because you don't want to get caught in a situation where your child has a limited amount of coverage. Just think about what burial costs are doing these days. For instance, but the average burial in the state of Georgia in 2015, I believe, was $15,000, and they believe that by the year 2020, in the state of Georgia, burial costs will be around $20,000. So that's a significant increase. And so, having a small policy amount like that is not going to do very much as time rolls on.
Okay. I feel a sneeze coming on, but hopefully I can ignore it. Okay, so basically, a child's term rider is something that attaches onto a regular life insurance policy. It never exceeds the value that you have on yourself, and most of the time, whenever they get of age, it just goes away and nothing's can be done to it.
Depends on the carrier, yes, but it can.
Okay. So are there other options then for insuring a child?
Yes, and the biggest and best option is to obtain a separate policy for that child. So they're going through the underwriting, their medical records are being examined. They usually don't require a paramed under 18. Again, paramed being where they're doing a physical inspection at home. Usually it's not required on child's policies, but again, it's looking at that child's medical records, and it's giving coverage for that child on a policy that will go much farther in many cases than age 18.
Okay. Well, what advantages then are there if we're doing that to the child's term rider? What advantages then is there on having a separate policy for the child?
Well, for one thing, you get to choose as to whether you'd like it to be a term policy or a whole life policy. So you might want a short fixed window, and some policies will even give you, for instance, a 20 or 30-year window with the ability to renew that for another 20 or 30 years. Or you could choose a whole life policy, which just right out of the gate says until age, usually 100, 105, that the policy is going to be set in stone. As long, again, of course, as you pay the premium, it's going to continue like that for the rest of that child's life. And so that does a number of things. That means that the policy is fixed. That means that, especially if it's a whole life policy, that if they get diabetes or heart condition age 20, age 30, and on up, especially with the whole life policy, you're not having to worry about the policy being re-underwritten to make sure that they qualify for those health parameters. So it locks in the health at a certain age, especially for whole life policies, or if you've got a term life that has the guaranteed ability to renew to another section of that term. So it locks in the lowest price. Diseases or illnesses are not going to affect the insurability, and of course, you can set it on the basis of term or whole.
Well, I know if I had my choice, I would rather qualify something at the absolute youngest and healthiest I could be. That way that price is locked in there for as long as possible. Well, I wouldn't want to have something and then have to redo it and have the risk of me getting something since the first time that could cause the premium to jump up or be disqualified.
That's right. I mean, you're putting yourself in a position where you're looking at the very best health that you'll ever be. I mean, think of it this way. For just about everybody under the sun, your health is going to do one of three things. It's either going to get better, which is not likely. It's going to stay the same, which is not likely. Or it's going to get worse, which is the most likely. So, it's all downhill from birth. You grow, your body is growing. They say that your body starts dying the moment it stops growing. So I don't know, I'm not a scientist or a doctor or a medical professional, but I will say that you never get younger. You never get, generally speaking, never get healthier than what you are at a very young age. And so it's a good thing to go ahead and lock those things down, especially if you're looking at a whole life policy that's going to have all the parameters fixed and immovable for the rest of your life.
Well, what disadvantages could there be of getting a separate policy instead of the rider?
The only slight disadvantage is that with a whole life policy, you're actually going to probably pay a little more money than on a child's term rider. The difference between the two is negligible. I know in one case there was a policy that I wrote for a customer that added like a $15,000 child's term rider, and they paid a couple dollars extra per month. Okay, and then you have then another. We also quoted at that same time a policy on their own that would last their whole life, and at that time it was about $20. So yeah, $18 difference, but $20 for a policy, and I think at the time it was a $250,000 policy, so it was locked in for a very, very long time. And so, by the time you get to
no new health deal,
no new health, so they develop something crazy, like I've seen cases where childhood diabetes sets in, or you have heart issues that can show up. You've got kidney issues that can show up.
cancer, leukemia,
Any number of things. Yeah, child cancer. When you have child's cancer, it doesn't matter how old you get, they're going to still look back and ask the questions, have you ever had cancer? That's one of those ever questions. It's not like, have you smoked tobacco or used tobacco in the last 5 years? It's, have you ever had cancer? And being able to say, my policy is fixed, maybe I can't add $1 million of coverage to it, but at least I have this set in stone for the rest of my life as long as I'm paying the premiums.
I imagine that parent would be really happy.
That's right.
Well, so what do you typically advise when someone sits down and says, "Look, I don't know which one do you advise me to get?"
Look, if your finances are so tight that you're discussing to have insurance for your child or not to have insurance for your child, you should get a child's term rider. At the end of the day, having a part of a loaf of bread is far better than having no loaf of bread at all. So, having coverage on them, at least to some limit. If your budget is just that tight that a couple dollars a month could push you over the edge of breaking the bank, you at least need to get a child's term rider and lock that in. However, having said that, the differences monetarily between a child's term rider and having a full, whole life or a long-term term policy is so negligible, such a small difference, that I almost always suggest that a customer get a whole life or a term life policy. And the whole life doesn't have to be this fancy thing with cash value. It can just be straight, this is the amount of coverage, this is the amount of monthly payment, and this is how many years it's going to last.
100-something years.
100 or 105 years usually. I do have a policy type with a certain carrier that goes to age 132.
Oh, nice.
That's a significant age. I doubt very seriously you're going to be here at age 132, but that's just to prove to you that you can go a long time with these policies and have a huge advantage in that as time goes on and as that child gets older. So again, if your budget is just so tight you can hardly afford the insurance, let's look at child's term rider. But if you have a little bit of wiggle room and you can look at these details and put them together, and be able to afford $20 a month, generally speaking, 25. If you really get fancy, it might be upwards of that. But having that policy in place is a tremendous benefit for your child for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, whenever it comes to, when we talk to people, we hope people will get life insurance for themselves. And then we really hope they get it on their kids. It is so sad to see a GoFundMe account for a small child, and the parent maybe thought, I got to get stuff for me so my kids can have coverage, but they never even enter into their mind what would happen if their child passed away and they've got to start a GoFundMe account to try and bury them. So
let's be honest. I mean, there are a lot of people who do that with college savings. And the thing with college savings is you're thinking it's going to be this huge amount. And so I'm going to have to set up, I'm going to have to pay so much money into it, and it becomes so overwhelming that the parent does nothing. Well, life insurance, sometimes it's treated the same way by parents, but really the expense of putting it together is nowhere near the same kind of ball game. It's like football versus baseball or basketball. It's not even the same discussion. It's a totally different realm, you know, and taking that extra step. Now, I will also add this, that many carriers do require the parent to have coverage before they'll extend coverage to the child. Doesn't necessarily always have to be with their company, but they do want to make sure that you have life insurance, and that helps avoid crazy circumstances which sometimes do arise. So those are things to consider. So here's how you get started. You might be asking, how do I take that step? Well, as always, we thought about that in advance. We thought, what would happen if somebody's watching this video and they said, I'd like to get life insurance coverage for my child? And we thought, I know, let's put a link right above this video. And if you're watching later on YouTube, right below this video. So all you have to do is click on that link. You will notice that it does start from a family perspective, from an adult perspective. But you can choose how many people need coverage. You can fill the form out accordingly, but it's very quick. Usually within 60 seconds, you've gone through the whole policy that's needed, or the whole questionnaire and all the questions that are needed. And so that's enough to get things rolling. You can start there, and guess what? We have so many options available to you that we're going to compare and give you the top 3 options, sometimes with the same company, sometimes across companies, the top 3 options for your child, and you can make that decision on an educated basis. And we're going to take into account all the things we talked about today and help walk you through and navigate that process.
All right, cool, excellent. So as always, please go ahead and like and share this video. Subscribe, make sure you're liking our Facebook page, you're subscribed to the channel. Share this video with somebody who has kids. Even if you don't know them, that they've got life insurance on them or their kids, if you know somebody who has kids, share this video with them, because if they've been meaning to do it and they haven't got it, they'll be appreciative that you sent it to them. So
yeah, if you haven't looked into getting a policy for your children, then you really should, because not only could you lock in the lowest rates they're ever going to get in their entire life, you could avoid events that cause your child to become uninsurable, like cancer, other major illnesses, but you can also prepare for unexpected circumstances. Look, I know, having 3 children of my own, it's the worst nightmare imaginable to think about what would happen if one of my children were to pass away. But taking that extra step, going ahead and locking that process in now, it doesn't take that long to do. It's not that big of a headache. And oh boy, it could sure save a lot of headache down the road. So just go ahead and do that today. We want to be your family's ultimate advocate in the insurance industry. We want to help your family take care of all of their needs. And again, if you're in the states of Georgia, Ohio, or Arizona, we can take care of your needs. We can help you get this policy underway and get your family protected. We appreciate the time that you spend with us on these Facebook Live events. We ask that you go ahead and share, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff again. And as always, we would like you to make it a great day.